So today we're going to talk about Article 13, because it's important to talk about, and it's possibly going to change the internet forever, and the vote is very soon. It's something that I think we should cover, even though plenty of people have already talked about it. There's been hundreds, if not thousands, of major creators online across YouTube and other platforms that have talked about it. You've seen the online campaigns, especially from YouTube, hashtag save your internet, things like that, but the truth is I feel like people don't truly understand Article 13 and how bad it will actually be for the internet. So some of you probably don't really understand Article 13, especially more than maybe what you've heard from word of mouth or something like that. So we're going to go into, I guess, a detailed breakdown really of this whole thing. So Europe has the European Union. Most of you should know that. That's something you're supposed to learn in school, which is sort of like a government that nations in Europe gain membership to that is designed to promote things like trade, peace, stability, and unity throughout the continent. This European Union has a parliament called, well, quite simply, the European Parliament. The European Parliament has been dealing with legislation for over a year now that has been extremely controversial and will continue to be even after the final vote is cast by the MEPs, or the members of European Parliament. Basically, for other Americans who just for some reason can't get that through your head, these people are what we would consider like congressmen and congresswomen, okay? They vote on different legislation and things like that, which will overall really affect the whole continent of Europe, except for a select few states and possibly Britain coming up. So this legislation is called the EU Copyright Directive, which is supposedly to ensure a well-functioning marketplace for the exploitation of works and other subject matter, taking into account in particular digital and cross-border uses of protected content. There's been a lot of discussion over this entire directive in general. It's pretty controversial altogether. There are other articles, some of them are very unimportant, but of course then there's ones like the very controversial and very recognized section of the legislation, Article 13. Article 13 is designed to primarily quote-unquote protect copyright, most likely by just holding websites like YouTube accountable and legally liable for copyright infringement taking place on their platform. For instance, if someone just rips a song and uploads it to YouTube without proper permissions and copyright exemptions, YouTube would be subject to quickly take this content down or be held legally liable for the availability of said copyright infringing content. Not only that, but they would actually be forced to completely design a system that would prevent the future ability of said copyrighted content to be posted onto their platform. This is the point where people will start to comment, Content ID. Well, yeah, many of you are already aware of Content ID on YouTube, which is the system that YouTube has implemented to auto-flag content for copyright infringement. And many of you are also aware of how the system is super faulty and how it's problematic as is. And it already has significant issues that hinder the accuracy of the system, and overall the content copyright infringing issues on YouTube have grown so severe that they're easily abusable by people who want to make a quick buck and by major corporations due to just how bad the system is set up on YouTube in the first place. The last thing YouTube really needs at this current point in time is another big issue in the copyright field. They don't need anything that's going to make this bad problem worse. Well, the most dangerous part of Article 13 would make the faults of Content ID look like cakework, because this law would essentially force YouTube to increase their copyright policing of the platform exponentially, forcing them to quickly build upon an already broken system to enforce a law that simply cannot be successfully upheld on a platform like YouTube in the first place. And the truth about this whole thing is that Article 13 will seriously damage the online ecosystem irreversibly. This is not something that will be easily fixed. If this gets passed and they really start implementing this, the internet is going to go through a change. Regardless of what people say, regardless of what people think, all the hypotheticals are already out there. I've seen so many of them, but even then, none of them ever address the internet and how it will change. You simply cannot pass such an aggressive legislation that really targets the entire online ecosystem and then just expect for everything to work out fine. It's just not going to go over well, and it's not going to be held by national borders. I often hear a bunch of Americans, or fellow Americans I should say, that the law's not going to affect us. You know, we live in the United States, we're not part of the EU or Europe in general. We got our freedom, right? You know, we're fine. The communists over in Europe can have fun getting copyrighted to hell. Unfortunately, that's where you're wrong. YouTube already can't perfectly police copyright on their website, let alone police it to a point that is generally acceptable. The last thing that they're gonna do is just magically expand upon this filter only in one geographical area of the world, which is gonna cost them money and resources, might even actually cost them more to try and specify down to this specific location. And then on top of that, it's just not gonna work in the first place. This is going to be a sweeping change to the internet as we know it, even in the United States. People in the US, creators like myself, we're going to have to go through changes, and even if we don't go through changes, or if we do and the law still comes after us really, there's still going to be a problem in Europe, you know? People in Europe watch my content, and if, well, especially since there's a lot of copyrighted works in this, if, of course, with this Article 13 coming along, if that becomes a problem, I'm still going to be affected by it, even though I don't live in Europe, even though I live thousands of miles away from Europe. It's not just going to happen in one small area just because that's where the law is actually passed. That's not how that works. We might be outside of the law's jurisdiction technically, but we're still going to be completely affected and policed by it. In reality, you think that would piss more Americans off because usually the last thing Americans like is just some random other country having the ability to do anything remotely chaotic to the United States, you know? You would think that more Americans would be like, well, God, you know, the Europeans can kind of completely police our internet, so yeah, maybe we should do something about this. But no, I don't see that very often. Like I said, I see a lot of Americans thinking that the law will not affect us, and hate to tell you, just not the truth. In specific, creators on YouTube like myself will be extremely damaged by this legislation. For instance, you know, the gameplay you're currently watching is actually based on several copyrighted works. The video game itself, that's a copyrighted material. The music in the background is most likely based on a copyrighted work, or maybe I've used a copyright-free soundtrack, which I will do on occasion, just to make my life a little bit easier. The music from the game is copyrighted, most likely, especially if it's part of an actual soundtrack, which a lot of games have. With these copyrighted works, which, while being PR suicide to their consumer base, would completely destroy my ability to make the kind of content that has garnered me hundreds of thousands of loyal subscribers if anyone decided to take action. Of course, people would be entirely pissed if Activision told me that I had to take all my Call of Duty content down, which is basically all of my videos, because obviously they don't like censorship, but at the end of the day, the law gives them the right to do that if something like this passes. Well, technically they could do it now, it'd just be a little bit harder. This is basically free reign for people to do whatever they want, as long as they've got copyright. It's flat out censorship. And I wouldn't even come close to the top 10% of people who would really be affected by this. You know, people who make song covers, parodies, movie reviews, music reviews, let's play, you know, gaming videos. I mean, just dozens of categories of content that you enjoy on a daily basis would effectively have their careers completely destroyed by such a major implementation. Every single one of these works is based basically on a copyrighted material, and with a faulty system that can't possibly police these details properly, people are going to be affected even if what they do is within fair use. Memes will also be heavily affected, regardless of how much nonsense supporters of the law spew about how these things will be protected. They most certainly will not be. It's not that easy. You know, they love to say, well, it's going to be protected with these new systems that we're going to have implemented, but they just don't realize that the systems in place that are a tenth of the size of these potential platform-changing censorship machines already can't do that well enough. Regardless, creators and even common internet users who don't create are going to see a potentially catastrophic change to the communities that we've spent the last few decades of internet access building. This isn't something to be taken lightly. And when you break down and really look at most of the support versus most of the criticism of Article 13, you see the clear divide in who is often on which side. Of course, there's exceptions to the rules, but when you look closely, most of the support for this law comes from multi-billion-dollar entertainment industries. The same people who are often already abusing copyright on YouTube to screw creators out of their money. There's lobbyists who are paid to voice support for the bill by said industries. They're basically puppets that get people to vote on what they want because of money. Money talks, folks. I mean, let's be honest. And the people who don't like Article 13 are not the ones who are putting the money in the pockets of the people voting. Let's just say that. Greedy executives are another big part of it. I mean, they can fill their pockets a little bit more if they can abuse copyright even more than they already are. But when you look at who's against it, oftentimes you're going to see it's creators like myself who are going to be affected by this. People who actually use and enjoy the internet and the culture that is built around itself. Because let's be honest, the people voting on this and the people who are behind this, they're not really internet users. Of course, yeah, they'll probably look at the news, they might use Facebook and Twitter, stuff like that. But do you think they go home and watch hours of YouTube videos and enjoy their favorite creators? You think they live stream on Twitch? Huh? Do you think they do shit like that? Because I can assure you, they're not. There's even companies that have completely revolutionized the internet like Google who are against Article 13. Even Susan Wojcicki, one of the most hated people on YouTube, stands against Article 13. The creator of the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee, he's against Article 13. I mean, it's not 100% like this, but the general direction in which people favor which way is pretty clear. Support for Article 13 is often big business trying to milk every dime they can out of the internet, while opposition to the Article 13 and really the entire copyright directive in general is pretty much the little guy who will be stepped on by this legislation or the people who actually make the internet what it is. But there is good news. Article 13 isn't actually passed yet. I mean, there's been plenty of confusion about that, and I know. But the final vote for Article 13 will be taking place in just a few weeks. There is no official date yet, but every single MEP or member of the European Parliament will be voting on this. It's huge. These people are supposed to be in place to represent the people that they govern over, the people of Europe. So show them that. Below, I've listed plenty of resources that you can use to not only contact the people who will be voting for this legislation, but to find demonstration locations and planned protests throughout Europe. There are plenty of those coming up. Even if you're not a European like myself, contact these representatives, quote unquote, and let them know that you don't appreciate them trying to meddle in places that they don't understand. On top of that, share information about Article 13 with your friends and family. Get them to understand how bad this really will be. And make sure that you join in on the online efforts to not only understand Article 13, because that's very important, but to also defeat it. We need to save the internet. This is the last chance to save the internet as we know it. And I'm gonna leave with a couple final words. At its core, Article 13 will enable swaths of online censorship. Content online will be forever changed, and it completely shifts the power away from the online community who actually use the internet and enjoy what it has to offer, and into the hands of people who want to abuse this power or, at the bare minimum, would like the opportunity in case such a need arises. Article 13 is not here to make the internet a better place. I know they like to say that, but it just isn't. It's here to make the internet another revenue source for multimillionaires, even billionaires. Article 13 is not going to protect creators like it claims to. It's going to irreversibly harm us. The economic impact of such legislation is not even considered well enough to the point that they understand what's going to happen. Do they consider online startups in Europe that will face harsh laws that subject them to penalties for things that they can't really control? It discourages creativity and innovation. It steps on the neck of the internet community, and in general, it ruins one of the greatest things humanity has ever accomplished, a free internet. And worst of all, it hurts every single one of us. I don't want to see a law like this get passed. I don't want to see such censorship become law in such a major area of the world. I know it's easy for people to say, well, I'm just one person. My voice doesn't matter. But the truth is that mentality has already caused Article 13 to even get this far in the first place. Of course, there has been a ridiculous amount of criticism of this article and overall the entire directive. But making our voices louder and really putting pressure on the vote is the best thing that can be done right now to protect the internet. It only takes a few minutes out of your day to do something about this, and those few minutes might actually protect the internet as we know it. If you enjoy the internet right now, if you get on the internet and you watch YouTube creators like myself every single day, and you love the ability for us to bring you this content in the way that we do, and you enjoy watching us make content that not only satisfies our creative needs, but also satisfies your desire for entertainment, you should be staunchly against this Article 13. Thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here. Of course, share this video with your friends and family. Follow me over on Twitter at @Optimus. I post memes, thoughts, and updates over there. It's a surefire way to get all the newest notifications of my content because, as we know, YouTube systems are not very great at doing their jobs. Notifications are another one of those things they just don't have right. Join the Discord down below. I will be talking more about Article 13, most likely on Twitter. I'll probably also make an update video after the vote here on the channel. But until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, being censored by the entire continent of Europe, basically, and signing out.